Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Welcome to Why We Roll, a tabletop role-playing game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio. We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre, and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet. Through the show, we hope to amplify new creative voices. We chat with different indie TTRPG designers, talking through a range of questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs. We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games so powerful. Before we introduce today's guest, a reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please consider supporting the show and all of our games over at patreon.com/Stillfleet. Okay, let's find out why we roll. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Why We Roll, the TTRPG chat show from the Stillfleet Studio. As always, I'm Chris Pickett, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Wythe Marshall.
Hey, it's me.
It sure is. And today, I'm very excited. We are joined by two special guests from Mage Hand High Five. We're joined by Rowan McStay and Casey Papas, who a player and GM respectively.
Hello.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to chat.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, for the uninitiated, could you give us a quick intro? What is Mage Hand High Five? What do y'all do? Etc. There you go.
Casey, I'll do Mage Hand, you do Badlands?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Mage Hand High Five as the blanket podcast is a genre focused narrative, like very immersive kind of actual play podcast, where our main focus is highlighting genres outside of high fantasy, like genres that you don't always see in tabletop. And sometimes we're reskinning D&D to do that. Like we are in the Badlands, and then other times we're playing indie systems and featuring indie games with various and sundry GMs. But our big thing is like narrative-driven genre storytelling. And right now we are in the middle of a long-form campaign called The Badlands, which Casey is running.
Yeah, The Badlands is our current campaign. It's sort of a gritty Western. It's inspired by Stephen King's Dark Tower series, the Fallout line of video games, and now the television show that's come out since we started.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this very sort of the common people facing up against large corporations that want to do them in.
Nothing relevant.
Yeah, I can't.
It's very apropos of whatever's going on.
I feel like Robin describes it as a fantasy Western epic, which I think is correct.
Yeah. It's very genre based, but also there is we bring in a lot of elements of fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi as well, and just play along with the story. Sort of the central themes of home and where home is and what do you make of home.
Yeah, I also like that you have a theme.
So I want to come back to that because that's something I talk about a little with TTRPG design, but sometimes it gets buried. And I feel like, Chris, we're so focused on that sort of narrative loop discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the deeper themes, I think maybe because we've been working on our own games where we have that sense of like the deeper part, but maybe for other folks who are designing games or just GMing or making actual play podcasts, it'd be good to discuss kind of how do you have the deeper idea and then connect it to, okay, what am I actually asking my friends to, how are we goofing off collectively and creating a story that anyone would want to listen to? But one reason that we wanted to talk to y'all is you specifically, even on your website, right, you have kind of the story is about magic and family kind of against capitalist warmongering and the ravaging of a frontier. So it sort of implies this kind of colonial setting that is being potentially destabilized, that process of colonization by the player characters. So just definitely something that I want to get back to. But before we do that, maybe I don't know, could we hear a little about how you got into games just in general? Like how maybe each of you are together? Like what's your background in games?
Yeah,
what kind of games are you into?
What are your origin?
Yeah.
What are your origin stories?
Oh yeah, we love an origin. Yeah.
I actually got into TTRPGs not very long ago. I was in grad school. I had never played tabletop before that, which is kind of nuts. A long history of video games. I've been playing Pokemon since I was a child, but long history of video games.
You still have that save file, right?
Yeah. Listen, some of my childhood starter is still around.
Wow.
But my experience with tabletop does not go as far back. I got into it in grad school because one of the other grad students wanted to start a campaign, and I joined, and it was this chaotic game of like 12 people all playing at the same time. And so I, in like a 3-hour session, I got to play for maybe 10 minutes. And, they say always leave them wanting more. And I think that's what happened was I was like, I want to play more than what's happening right now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So it's like you can't eat just one chip. You can't play just 10 minutes of pretend murder goof with your homies. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I got to talking with friends. I was living in Chicago at the time, and was like, went out online to my friends back home and were like, hey, we should all start an online game together. And so that started up for a few years. And then I got into a group with two of the other players on Mage Hand, Max and Rowan. And from there, that evolved into this. And now we're doing this full time, or not full time, but we're doing this a lot, which is
a lot of the
really
time.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I likewise did not get into it super long ago. My introduction was very much coming out of theater. I went to grad school for musical theater, and with Max from our show, and we graduated in late 2019, famously a great time to be entering the theater scene.
A really, really good time for theaters, yeah.
Really timely, yeah. So around March, I sort of realized that I wouldn't be moving to New York soon. And I needed something that felt creative and that felt artistic and fun. And Max got me into D&D. And then even when we weren't playing, because I was playing with him and I was playing with another group, and even when we weren't playing, I was devouring actual play. Because at the time I would go on these really long walks, like those COVID walks that were 3 hours of just trying to keep yourself sane.
Your government mandated wellness walk.
Yeah. So I on my government mandated wellness walk, I took in so much actual play, and I got really excited by just the medium of storytelling that is. And, we kept playing. I ran a couple games, Casey and Max and I started playing. And then we were Casey had this really cool idea for Badlands. And because we're all actors, we were well, since theater is not sort of producing itself, let's make something. Let's start something. And that's kind of how this was born. We needed a fourth, and we tricked Robin into joining. I had done a show with Robin, and I messaged them and was like, "Hey, would you want to like play a one shot with us just for fun?" And I told the other two like, "Hey, we're gonna scout Robin for this show," and they thought that's what was happening. And Robin, I just didn't want to invite them and then have it be like weird if it didn't work out. So I told Robin it was a one shot, and then we invited them to make it an actual play.
Like 10 minutes after you're done with the session, you're like, so how about?
By the way.
Yeah, by the way. It's really interesting, actually. We've talked to a few other folks who do actual play on the show. Like we talked to Bad House RPG, Fabian and Joe from there, and you know, whatever. We've had some conversations, but something that I've never really thought about or put together is, you know, we always talk about like, okay, well, what do we think the kind of driving force behind the boom in actual play over the last like 10 years or so has been? I've never thought about the fact that just like theaters just were completely inaccessible from March of 2020 onward. And that funding for that is still cut, and that like all of this stuff, it makes so much sense that there would be kind of a redirect outside of, or like alongside of the kind of general popularity of the format.
Yeah, I feel like in social punk utopia, theater comes to you. You know, it's just like a reappropriation of what's around to have these stories get somewhere, to do something with that. You know, be delusional about kind of libidinal energy, the desire to create worlds and inhabit them and change the world. Yeah. So super cool that you tricked your friends into doing that. And it worked. It's great. It's a great show.
I mean, in my day walking life, I am a fundraiser for an off-Broadway theater. And it just having been in the theater space for a little bit, it feels very much like self-producing has gotten more popular even in the pandemic. And it almost like online content and streaming and podcasting and all of that, like it reminds me a little bit of the writer's strike from a while ago, where like things like Dr. Horrible were born, and like all of this online content started happening because people were like, it wasn't happening elsewhere. And so I don't know, I'm always interested in like how this has progressed.
Yeah. I think it's kind of an expression of the maybe better or good, slightly good parts of the internet, where it's like there is a democratization and proliferation of different medias that kind of, you know, allows for different accessibility. And we'll ignore the evil side of the internet, which feels bigger to me these days. But anyway,
it's looming.
Yeah, it feels looming.
Yeah, it makes me wonder as well. There, in sort of the media climate of today, I think the one of the big things that I hear from everyone is like, oh, everything is a reboot or a sequel. There's no like original media is hard to come by these days because people just aren't greenlighting it as much. Like it's not that there isn't original media out there, it's that big companies aren't interested in maybe taking a loss on it. And so it feels like sometimes there are people who become a little dissatisfied with what they're given and go, well, why don't I make the content I want to see in the world? Be the media you wish to see in the world. Yeah. And they go out and create instead of waiting for it to come to them.
Yeah. And especially as larger production companies move further and further into this kind of neoliberal model of like, it has to make money. Like we cannot, like you said, they can't take a wash on it. It has to make money. So yeah, it feels like it's becoming more and more conservative as time goes by, just in terms of like budgeting for any kind of media, really.
Oh, it also feels like there's a level of, because of that money making, it feels like there's a level of like safety censorship that happens of like, oh, well, we can't tell this kind of story because what if the people don't want to buy it? And like, I don't know, the first time that I encountered an asexual character was in actual play. The first 3 times that I encountered an asexual character were in actual play. And so there's certain things where it's like certain stories I feel like are getting told in AP that just aren't in a lot of other media because, you know, the companies don't want to risk it for the biscuit.
That's some technical speech, but I think our listeners are smart enough.
That was a term that was coined by the Chicago school, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the Chicago school. Biscuit for the biscuit. That's not a Chicago accent. Yeah, no, I mean, I think Steven Soderbergh has written about this a lot with cinema, and the idea that it's like this small-heartedness that hit even before the current wave of neo-fascist, neoconservatism or whatever, but kind of like in high neoliberalism at the end of history, studios were already looking at kind of short-term gains in foreign markets. Private equity was entering and all this stuff, and so pictures were getting dumbed down, and you had fewer. Like, you can see the number of movies total drop off a cliff, but especially like kind of new plots drop off. And people have kind of looked at that in cultural studies various ways. But I think you're right that, it's like we were saying about theater, where does that energy go? And one of the good things about imagination games, as opposed to things where you really do need to visualize all of it. I mean, I know people use visuals more and more, but you don't have to spend that much money. It's a lot cheaper. Yeah. So maybe that's a good segue to talk about like how you all do AP. I don't know if that's, like how did you go about, I guess, creating the Badlands specifically, or more broadly, just Mage Hand Tie 5, and what for you is that experience like, and how's it different from that first 10-minute game where you're just goofing off and no one is capturing it? I don't know. How does AP work as a medium? Is that a fun question? I don't know. Chris,
yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, it saves a lot of money on the VFX. We don't have to do a whole lot. We don't have a whole lot of budget in that department.
You get to offload that onto the consumer. It's brilliant.
Yeah. What if all of our VFX were imagination?
Yeah. Imagine a world. Now imagining a world. Anyway.
We grow up doing it. It's pretend. Yeah. Like, we can be like, hey, what if there was a Western and there was a big freaking cactus and y'all were fighting it? That hasn't happened.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I can speak to. I won't speak to the Badlands creation because that's very much Casey's baby. But the podcast as a whole, honestly, we were doing about 6 months of prep work in advance of making sure that we were getting a team together that we did good storytelling with, running a bunch of like test sessions and doing a lot of play testing and a lot of character play testing and a lot of like, is this group dynamic something that we want to carry forward? Doing a lot of research on how to market it, and like me doing a really quick and dirty learning curve on how to edit and sound design it, which I've gotten significantly better at over the course of like 2 years, but had to start at a level that we felt was, polished enough for day one. And we also, when we were deciding on our kind of ethos as a show, we wanted to focus on narrative and like good storytelling, as opposed to like, we're not trying to be a comedy podcast. Like, you're going to find jokes, like it's going to be funny at times, but we're going to be focusing on the story, and we're going to try to just play the truth of the story and let that be funny when it's funny and not when it's not. And so that's kind of been our ethos in terms of storytelling. But Casey, I'll let you talk about how Badlands was formed.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Badlands is that it sort of started with me being like, we had a home game, and I was like, well, I think I had this idea for a Western, because I was playing a Fallout game at the time. I was like, I think it'd be really fun to play a Western D&D game. And so I asked the group, I was like, hey, like, Max, if you ever need a break from DMing, let me know. I've got something that I can, hop in and we can play. And shortly after that was the conversation of, hey, we should start a podcast. And so from there, everyone looked at me and was like, well, you've got something in the chamber. And I was like, yes. And so I sort of just, DMing found me. But it was, from there, I don't know that I set out to create Badlands with the theme of home in mind. I think it naturally occurred when all three of the players showed up and their backstories were either running toward home or running away from home.
Or both.
or both. And
what?
It was it sort of just came from that. And from there I was able to try and craft the world in such a way that there are places that you want to go and stay forever. And there are places that are trying to take those places from you. And where do you side? And is home important enough to you to fight for it? So I think the Badlands really sprang from that.
I mean, it kind of immediately makes me think of All the Pretty Horses.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know All the Pretty Horses.
we're big really?
I think I can say safely, Chris and I are both just huge fans of like postmodern American literature, and Cormac McCarthy's kind of the goat. I mean, he's up there.
Pretty heavy in there. You should definitely
highly recommend.
I'm never going to tell anybody how to live their life, but you should definitely read All the Pretty Horses.
Greatness.
If not the entire Border trilogy. I mean, they're short. He doesn't use punctuation. It just reads like a poem. It's great.
I'm so excited. It is added to my list.
But it really does speak to the idea of home and how that changes under modernity, specifically in All the Pretty Horses, and like kind of the loss of the West, the loss of like this kind of like colonial imaginary. But you know, it's about like an 18, I think he's like 17 or 18-year-old main character who like loves the ranch life, but is just lost when it is kind of taken away from him by the times and machinations of capital.
A Texan caballero, but it's kind of on the theme of not finding home. It's kind of, I mean, Blood Meridian does some of the same work with indigenous resistance to empire, you know, in the settling of the West 100 years before the Border trilogy, where it's like, what does home look like once it's been irrevocably shaken up? You know, people have been murdered, you know, resettled, quote unquote. The food's different. The language even is different that's being imposed. And so there's sort of waves of like unhoming and rehoming that occur. And I think that's something that occurs all over in different times and spaces, but on those colonial frontier, quote unquote, you know, frontier, pioneer, border towns, it's like really, that there's like a certain melancholy from that I think even in the dumbest spaghetti Western, you get a sense of. So I think maybe that's where I you know, not to say how your players arrived at this feeling of running from home, running to home, but like there's something about having to make your own home when it's that unsettled. And unless you're, I guess, you know, I mean, there's so many, I guess if you're playing like an indigenous character, then you're trying to maintain a certain kind of home. But I think for a lot of other kinds of characters on that, in the Western setting, you would be all sort of navigating like, what about this feels like home to me? And what about this is, you know, not great. So I'm curious to hear more basically about what the Badlands is and how you went about specifically world building in a sort of Western mode, but with knowing that you maybe didn't want the story to be like pro, you know, capitalist colonial stuff.
Well,
right? Like, how did that work? You know what I mean? If that's a fair question.
Yeah. I think because Westerns are tricky. Westerns are tricky, and there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot in Westerns that I don't want to emulate. There's a lot in there that is harmful and is you know, there's a lot of racism, a lot of sexism, a lot of displacement, and I wanted to focus on the parts of Westerns that rebel against that and that are noble qualities to emulate. I think one of my favorite Westerns is Seven Samurai, which is and you know, consequently Magnificent Seven after that, which is just shot for shot remake. But the idea of it sort of rebels against like a big trope in Westerns is the lone gunslinger who he doesn't rely on anybody. Like he's out for himself. He runs and guns. And I like Seven Samurai and I like Magnificent Seven because it rebels against that trope a little bit. It brings 7 lone gunslingers together, makes them fight not only together, but alongside a small town to fend off a bandit gang. And the idea of them sort of rejecting lonerism, creating this community, teaching them how to come together and fight, and then at the very end being like, oh, this isn't our win, this is theirs. Like, it's about the community. It's about the community, and it's about building that community in the face of the evils that are present. Like anything that would stand to tear that community apart or to take advantage of it. And I think that's a really noble theme that is present in Westerns, is the idea that, like, the community is worth fighting for.
I can also add too that, the setting that we're playing in, just for anyone who's not familiar, is very much not the American West. It is not set in a version of our reality in any way, shape, or form. And so a lot of it is like, we can do kind of genre play, but, there's not going to be racism, and there's not going to be fantasy racism. And like, one of the things that we take issue with D&D and like Wizards of the Coast is that there's a lot of fantasy racism and, real life racism that's like really prevalent through that we're here to create a world that feels like a place where anyone from our world feels like they can belong and see themselves in. And, we play a little bit with we play a lot of it with classism. Like, I think that's kind of one of the big overarching kind of things happening. But we play a little bit with sexism as well in my character and in her kind of relationship with the world and the societies in the world. And I think that was a very intentional conversation between Casey and I, of one of the things that is tricky about Westerns, as Casey said, was there's a certain level of misogyny. And even if there's not that necessarily, it's like, you see women and they're either a doting wife and mother, or a, femme fatale, or a prostitute. And in creating the character that I'm playing, I wanted to create someone who grew up in a more like matriarchal setting. So she was raised by her mother and two aunts who are like this family of folk healers, and marries a arms magnate from the big city, and like, in order to like financially provide for her family, and ends up in this really patriarchal setting and of this city. And basically think about like, okay, what happens to an actual person when they have to become what Westerns make of women? Like, what happens to a human being when they become the perfect doting wife and a femme fatale? And then where does she go from there, and how does she get home? So there's some intentionality of like playing with genre, and then there's other elements where we're like, we don't really want a racist world. Like, we're not going to make one.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like
it's a mix.
Like one thing we could say about genres, the way I tend to think about them and teach them at the deeper level than like colloquial vernacular genres we all know, like sci-fi, fantasy, that are based on sort of like Netflix movie tags, or I think of as like bookstore shelving. But like a deeper analysis, like tropes, like things you'd expect, like in a Western, people expect like a hot climate, a frontier of some kind, or like a cultural clash, things like that. And you're saying, another hallmark of the genre is kind of patriarchy and sexism, which leads to a smaller number of characters who are these kind of badass women with guns. That's kind of a different trope that's in response to the actual lived, mostly sexism. And then there's a lot of racism, like all the way down. And so it's kind of like you're saying, well, we could choose to engage with a lot of that, but let's say for whatever experience y'all are trying to create, you didn't want to engage with the sort of aspect of, right, and especially in a fantasy register, there's something about fantasy racism that also just seems so odd to me.
Yeah. Like, we're in a made up world, and we could choose to have it be racist or not, and that sucks.
Well, you could choose it to have it be racist. Not, you could have it not be misogynist, but I mean, you're saying, but I think there's something, fantasy gender tends to be maybe closer to non-fantasy gender maybe than race tends to get. Like, I think everyone maybe instinctually tries to avoid just straight up replicating actual real life racism in D&D. Do you know what I mean? Like, it gets filtered in this other dimension. I don't know. That's something.
With the misogyny too, I feel like that's an experience that I can speak to. Yeah. I think if there was someone on our show who was like, I want to tell this story that includes racism, and I'm someone who feels equipped to tell that story, that's different. But for me,
Yeah.
like
Right.
I feel like the character that I've created for Badlands is very much someone who has a lot of the lived experience that, like, you know, women in my family and other families for generations have been experiencing. And so I'm like, okay, this is an experience I can tell a story about and I feel comfortable doing in the right setting. And so a lot of it too is just like our own identities and our own representation. It's like I feel like I can tell that story in a way that, like, you know, we're not going to tell a story about racism in a fantasy setting.
Yeah. There's sort of a lived experience and like emotional intelligence and nuance that we can provide to certain stories, but not to others.
We also have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Casey.
Oh no, go ahead.
I mean, we also have like two of us. Robin and myself are non-binary, and like we also have a lot of like queerness in the world and a lot of NB folks in the world. And, you know, I think another thing that we've chosen to kind of not do is transphobia, homophobia. Like people kind of just acknowledge people's pronouns and people's gender identity. And I think, you know, coming up, maybe we have one reference to someone whose parents weren't keen on them transitioning, but otherwise I think it's very like the world just like people are gonna get, you know, harmed, but not because of their gender identity.
Yeah.
And I think any kind of marginalization and oppression that we're playing with is something A, that speaks to our own experience if it's there, and B, is done with like a really intentional, honed in focus on that thing.
Yeah. And I think it's wise to be mindful of the stories that you feel comfortable telling, and also the stories that you feel like you can do justice to.
Yeah, and that's the power of remixing genre and like using the tropes that you want to explore. And like you said, just it's a fantasy. So you can imagine that the other ones work a different way. And you could always unpack those later or something, you know what I mean? Right. But it's like they don't have to be essential to the kind of the version, the things of the West that you're dealing with.
It also seems like, you know, y'all do have kind of a specific focus about the stories that you do want to tell, right? So like, you know, a little bit of exploring gender, but also, you know, you mentioned earlier you play around a lot with like class and
class is like everything. Class is like the main thing.
So how does that kind of present itself in the Badlands? Like how does that affect the characters? How does that affect other NPCs? I'm curious about like ways maybe Casey as a GM you've kind of like mobilized class for the story, for the narrative.
Oh gosh. One of the villain factions is just all about class. There's an organization within the world called the Jameson Company, and the Jameson Company passes itself off as a family-run business that is here for you. Like they provide your every like need. They'll make it and they will let you buy it.
Kind of like
however,
an Acme.
Yeah, like
Amazon.
Acmazon. They are they very much like it is their unspoken mission essentially to be in your way. Like you can't do anything without needing a Jameson product. And they started out as an arms manufacturing company and then realized that not everybody buys guns. So let's make clothes, let's make chairs, let's make all of these things. And they are attempting to, I don't think this is too spoilery, they're attempting to take over the Badlands, which is this sort of stretch of western sort of desert-laden towns to the west of the city that the Jameson Company is in.
You're going to talk about the process of manufacturing a war that they pretended not to start?
Yeah, I think one of the one of the things that's fun about this campaign is I get to draw from things that I see. I get to see things in the real world that bug me, and I get to use it to fuel my stories. I see unfairness, I see injustice, and I try and make them things that the players can overcome. I will create a company that manufactures conflict in order to make people angry, and then fuel that anger, and say, well, if you're mad about it, we should do something about it. Like, and you know what? I've got just the products that you need to do something about that. Because nothing sells guns more like an open conflict.
As it turns
and
out.
So, yeah. And so, they might sink a town, or start an uprising in a town in order to sell the guns needed to quell it. And it's very much about rigging the game so that you always come out on top. And I think that is a very classist mindset, is trying to remain on top at all costs.
Yeah, it rings of like the East India Company or
Halliburton,
or Halliburton,
I mean,
or Musk, or any of these fuckers.
Yeah, like if you read or if you listen to like Blowback, like the really, really good history podcast, I highly recommend everyone listens. There's only like 10 episodes per season, so it's very easy.
Great things about Blowback.
That's great.
It's the best.
It's very good.
So like one thing that keeps coming up is how these companies, American arms manufacturers, will sell arms to all sides, and then at some point, more or less arbitrarily, like when it suits them, some, again, like, I don't know, Texas senator will be like, well, I can't believe the evil folks of blah blah blah, we have to go kill them on a holy crusade. But it's like you were involved with selling them weapons up until the moment when you arbitrarily declared them to be the sole sort of bad guys and everyone else is a good guy in this cartoonish way. And it happens over and over again. It happens across the 20th century and into obviously the 21st. And it's something that they materially, in a very lighthearted, again, well-produced way, are just reinforcing just what you're saying, that there's a kind of person who sees themselves as this fluid money person who floats above the earthly world. And I think you see that now with, like, I don't know, White Lotus. Like, this is a real class, right? The financier class that is able, the rentier class that can do whatever they want. And they don't see themselves as tied to a community organically or land organically or having to care about the environment, because I think they are kind of in their own heads, kind of cosmologically above it. And I think Musk is such a good example, because he sleeps on like a cot in his office wherever he goes, which to him is this like raw dogging, techno mendicant thing. But it's also like, it's kind of an insane rejection of emplacement and community.
Yeah.
And I think, I think it's great to have villains that are like that, as opposed to often in RPGs, I think, because we all grew up watching cartoons and playing video games, the boss is like essentially a really big, like, it's like Bowser, right? Like a big dragon who's just yelling and shaking his fist. But that's like, just a big guy yelling is not evil on it. You know what I mean? Evil is burning more carbon than any of us will in our lifetime on one trip, of a stealth bomber, right? Like, that's evil. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of infinite logistical, just like, anyway, sorry, I'm just agreeing with you. That's not a question.
There was one moment that I think, and I guess I can talk a little bit about like the player end of this, is like, there was one moment where, because each of our PCs have really different backgrounds with class as well. And the PC that Max is currently playing comes from Northern Threed, which is the rich end of this city. And he's like this young man who's like really embedded in the church and is like kind of a missionary and is just like out to do good and doesn't know that the church has kind of been, dicking people over, and doesn't know that Jameson's been dicking people over and has just been fed the propaganda forever. And there's this moment where there is an invasion of one of the city that our characters sort of call home in the Badlands. And the siege weapon is this massive Jameson branded train, like siege train, with a huge like Gatling gun on top of it that's just like leveling a lot of the city. And Casey, you narrated this moment where it was like, Wyatt, you look out and it's confusing because you see the Jameson logo branded on the train, and you've seen it on like your toothpaste and your furniture, and like, what is it doing here on a gun? And like that kind of stuff, I feel like hits me really hard. And and I think that Max obviously plays this kid who's from a lot of privilege. Robin is playing someone who grew up with like no money and no resources, and they do this thing that started kind of as a bit, but it was very grounded in the reality of the character, where you start to realize like that it's less and less of a joke, where anytime they have access to food, they start hoarding it. And like they will be at a continental breakfast, because those exist here, and they'll be like, I take 6 muffins because I don't know when the next time I'm going to eat is.
Yeah.
And then for Salome, like she grew up in a traveling family who basically like lived off of what they needed to survive, and then married a Jameson. And so there's a level of class transition and classism within her upper class position that she never quite fit in. So there's a lot happening on the player side as well with that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I keep thinking too, you mentioned earlier that that the Badlands is not really like set in like the American West necessarily, but more of kind of like an abstracted West. But there is this very American quality to essentially trying to create just a giant company town in the Badlands for Jameson.
Yeah.
Which that feels particularly like stinging to me in a lot of ways.
Is it the American West? No. Is it a critique of the military industrial complex?
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe.
So
do the Jamesons feel American? I don't know. Maybe.
Are they 4 blonde, blue-eyed boys? Absolutely.
Oh, God.
Casey and Rowan, maybe you can tell us some of the world building. So we've covered some, right? You said, okay, I don't want to lean into racism. I am going to play with some of the other tropes one would expect in the Western genre. Where are we? When are we? What kind of world is this? Was that something that you discovered through play? Was that something where you did a lot of homework up front, or was it like you had a sense of the story, the arc, and you started playing and players are adding details? Maybe any notes, any tips on world building, and how to sort of set up a campaign length cool story with huge stakes and big aha moments of that logo discovery, for example, which is so great.
No pressure.
Gosh, world building's interesting because I sort of just do like. This sounds so pretentious. It's just something I do. No,
you're so goddamn good at it, though.
I think what it comes from is like a lot of times, like I will think about this campaign unconsciously. Like I'll be at work, and visions of this campaign will dance through my head like sugar plum fairies, and I think. A lot of the world building comes from me attempting to poke holes in my own ideas. Like I will establish something and then go, okay, how does this not work? Like what questions are the players going to have if they approach this topic? How are they going to be like, okay, well, hold on. Wait, this doesn't make sense. How does this do this? And every time I poke a hole in my own theory, I get to patch it up. And that reinforces the world a little more, makes it a little more real. And so it's great because I get to take my anxiety and put it to use.
God bless.
I was gonna say earlier, I mean, it seems like one inspiration is just like fucking reading the news and then being like, what am I upset about? Like, how can I but yeah, having that outlet for your anxiety seems like a generative place to put that.
Yeah, it's
almost like political cartooning, right? Like it's kind of taken into this. I think of those 60s, like everything weird is happening in the world, and then it turns into this really psychedelic moment with like 2 talking animals. So I feel like there's something of that with fantasy gaming. But I really like what you said about deciding things and then poking holes in those things and then repairing them as a kind of process of like forging a world, as opposed to canonically deciding things and never changing them, which is very, very different sort of approach to the plasticity of like what is real in this world.
Yeah. I think a lot of that springs from the fact that like sometimes I will forget my own ideas, and so I'll be like, oh, this would be a cool idea to bring up later, and then it doesn't get brought up later because I don't remember that I had it. And I'll look back on my notes for episode like 7 and I go, whoa, that never happened. And so unfortunately I can't afford to be too rigid with my ideas, especially because my Max, Rowan, and Robin are so good at finding ways of like subverting things that I have planned.
It's not on purpose.
And like that's the beauty of D&D, and that's the beauty of tabletop and coming together as friends and telling the story together is you never know what the other people are going to bring to the table. And it makes the stories 10 times better. Like leaning into what the other people bring and the ideas that they have and the theories that they bring. Leaning into those and maybe saying, ooh, you know what? That sounds great. I might take a little bit of that. And building on that together and allowing them entrance into this world, allowing them ownership of it as well, makes the world building that much stronger, because then you have 4 people building on this world instead of just one. And I think that's sort of the core of bringing this alive is being open and not being afraid to say yes.
I think one of the coolest instances of that you have done was during that same sort of battle sequence when one of the characters was like, oh, that's a Jameson branded gun. That's strange. That fight was this big, like, kind of Act 1 finale of the whole campaign. And I think that what you said later was that we were all meant to be there for it. But what actually happened was that Robin's character also had a really pressing thing to deal with that was very personal to them, where they were having to rescue a friend. And I think you had planned it in such a way where we were going to end up having the battle out and it was going to lead us to that other personal thing. Mm-hmm. But Robin and I felt this like massive sense of urgency about it, where it was like, no, you go deal with that and we'll deal with this. And so Casey, in a week's planning process, turned this from one kind of encounter to a 2-part like back and forth battle sequence where half of us were trying to save our home and the other person was in their friend's mindscape fighting for his life. And it was, your flexibility is such a gift, and it also allows us to, for a campaign that's about home, it allows us to create together a place that we want to come home to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
I'm a fan of Casey's.
Whoa,
as you should be.
So meta.
I like that. I think that the thing that was established in Dungeon World and a lot of TTRPGs is that GMs should always be a fan of their players and their characters, and I like that it goes both ways for y'all. It's very sweet. Can I ask how much of each session or each recording is like strictly planned or railroaded, and how much kind of like Rowan, how much riffing do you do? I'm always just kind of curious about this with AP because it can go either way, and I think it's good either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't say how much is planned. I think Casey, you do a really good job of, there's certain beats that are not plot points, but just certain things that he's prepared for often, where it's like, I think honestly, if I'm getting you right, which I think hopefully I am, I think Casey knows exactly what all of the NPCs and villains are up to at any given time and how they're going about getting what they want. Mm-hmm. And so that creates a level of flexibility where Casey will have planned, like, this is what Jameson's up to, and this is what the church is up to, and they're gonna storm the city. Like, that's gonna happen, but how y'all deal with that is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we do a pretty significant amount of like riffing, a pretty significant amount of improvising, certainly solutions to things. I think often it feels as a player like we're being presented with obstacles rather than being presented with plot. And there's certain things that are like a conversation between two NPCs, or like a cutscene to a room that we're not even in, where we get to see a preview of a character that we haven't met yet. And certain things like that are a little planned, but like a lot of the, when we're all there together, it's very much everyone kind of reacting to each other in real time, which is fun. But I think that kind of gets to the taxonomy of actual play and how it can be, super sandboxy and like super off the cuff and like very about the improv or like very about the game, and like a lot of the mechanics are there. But honestly, I think for our show, and I guess as the person who primarily edits it, like we try to use the game as a structure for storytelling, where the audience will have a sense of what's going on mechanically, and we're not going to cut out roles, and we're going to like have the element of game and chance be that infrastructure and like the scaffolding for the story. But our particular actual play, we want it to feel like immersive storytelling with the game as like the frame of the narrative.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that a little bit, some of the part of the world building that I do, and the way I go about world building is that I will have images. Like, this also sounds a little pretentious, but these images come to me.
They come to me in the night.
I have
as I'm smoking a cigarette on the balcony.
Hildegard being in, you just go into a trance, and
they really do.
Casey astral projects every other night to get visions for the Badlands.
Listen, they're beamed into my brain. I don't know how to make them stop.
You're like Tolkien visiting Erda or whatever.
Or Philip K. Dick, he said he'd get hit with a beam of pink light, and he would have his alien consciousness would download this whole novel plot, and it's like he had no control, man. Like, he's just telling you what the aliens told him.
It's just
that's how it works, though. That's how it works for me with game design. So Casey, I want to hear what you have to say, because I feel like 100%. You just
flows through me.
But yeah, like I guess I am. The way my mind is very like visual oriented. Like I kind of have to see things in order to understand them, and so my mind works in pictures, and I'll remember specific moments that like impacted me from like movies and shows and things like that. And so the way I plan is that I'll have an idea for a scene, and then do my best to lay the groundwork in a way that the players will feel the need to create that scene, like to make that scene happen. And so I'll set up the events in order that scene happens or occurs eventually. Or if it doesn't, what's really fun about this is, like, while we're playing, sometimes another image will pop in my mind that's better, and I'm like, ooh, pivot, let's do that. It's about being open, and and there are some images that they'll never get played, and that's okay, because that's that's Badlands legends. Content that never came about, but
save it for the novels.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about your Badlands headcanon, which is funny because you are creating it.
Well, I mean, I think there's also we spoke a while back with the folks from the Maniculum podcast, and they're like a medievalist. They're a podcast of medievalists who will go over medieval history and folklore, and then kind of give you ideas for how to use it in a fantasy TTRPG. I think they're kind of specific to 5th edition D&D. But, they put out a book of just like items and artifacts based off of what they had done on the podcast. So there's
Whoa.
What I'm trying to get at is there's always room for a book of the Badlands down the line that includes the headcanon. Like, that's gold.
Yeah.
There's gold in them hills.
It makes me think, Chris, of Spencer as well. Like Spencer
Sure.
Campbell does these games that are one-off playable, roughly 48-page A5, perfect bound zines that are all cool and fun and use the system he's developed. But they're all kind of like very different settings, but in his mind, they're all in the same universe. They all connect, and you can kind of jump from one to the next, even though to me, having played a couple of them, they seem very different in genre and tone, but like on purpose in his mind, he's not doing one big game. He's doing lots of little games that are in his head connected, but it's like you don't have, like, it doesn't matter. It just helps him as a designer, storyteller, have fun with it and weave things throughout Easter eggs. And the more you read them all, the more you kind of can find those. And also just occurs to me that there's different ways to do design. And one, in linguistics, there's agglutinative language, like German, where you add bits wherever you want. And like the total number of bits is the word. Whereas like in English, you couldn't just add like another part of a word in the middle of a word. It would just be like, that's not a word, bro. Like, what the fuck are you saying? But I think there's kind of storytelling. There's the really tight, there's like Soderberghian storytelling where every single word of the screenplay is completely locked in. The storyboards are all drawn before you shoot Ocean's 11, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense to be like, I don't know, maybe in the middle there's this long scene where a guy's just eating carrots. But like David Lynch was like agglutinative, just like adding stuff in. And I feel like you see that in the Safdie brothers, right? With like Uncut Gems, like you're just adding bits until it feels weird enough. And generally, like you're saying, you had a story in mind. It pretty much happens kind of the way you want. And you're like, cool, that's the story. Like it's very, they're just different approaches. It's not that one is right or wrong.
Yeah.
One is this kind of classic approach and one is this kind of postmodern approach. But I think if you lean into the thing you're good at, maybe would be my thought. And again, I'm happy to hear what Rowan and Casey all think. But if you lean into the version you are good at as a storyteller, you can get better at it, as opposed to trying to force yourself to do the thing you're not as good at or not as interested in. Maybe is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
God, I was just talking to Linny from Twice Rolled Tales about this. How we were like, God, I think one of the biggest kind of journeys of this, because you always have people that you admire. And you always have people that you aspire to. But even like one of our things with our, planning our kind of ethos and like how we're going to do it and how we're going to tell the story. And a consideration that I've been having a lot of in terms of just not playing like anxiety comparison games with myself is, what does the best version of us look like? What does our actual play look like? Why is it something that people will want to listen to? Like, what does differentiate it from a home game? What we have in our corner specifically as a group is that all of us are actors and all of us are in some way or another storytellers, whether we're writers or, just performers. Like, that's kind of our bread and butter. And so as a group, we're like, okay, our thing is like, we're going to tell a good story. We're going to edit it tightly. It's going to feel like an audio drama with the structure of a game. And at the end of the day, like, that's our best self, at least for now, until we decided something else. But, there's not really a lot of use in comparing it to another actual play where their, best self is being really mechanics focused, or where their best self is being like, showcasing various systems, or where their best self is, being really funny and being like comedy improvisers. Like, we're kind of here to focus on being the best storytellers we can be for now. And that's kind of our corner.
Yeah. I think some of the best advice in terms of like figuring out your style and like how to become a writer is from Stephen King, who says the best way to become a writer is to write. And like, you have to write and write and write and write. And your personal style will have no choice but to appear eventually.
And that,
like, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
No, that's it. You just got to do it.
You just got to do it.
Yeah.
I was going to say sometimes being snowblind helps as well, but
you get a lot of writing done on those.
Steven's like, it's just flowing through me.
Yeah.
He's like, the stories are here, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Just come to me.
Oh man,
as if from God.
God, yeah.
And
Well,
then you
there's-
get sober and you write stories about AA, and you know what?
Yeah,
That's fun too.
That's great
And
too.
they're good. The new stuff's actually really good.
It's very
So,
good.
you know, good for him. Good for Steve. Steve, if you want to join us, can I call you Steve? I'm going to call you Steve. If you want to join us on the podcast,
Friend of the pod, Steve.
Yeah, long time listener.
I know he's like an anti-Trump guy. I don't know how far left, but I know he's not a Republican, right? So he's cool. You're invited, Steve. Anytime. I grew up reading you. Yeah.
He changes in a way that I think is nice. Like he'll look back on some of his moves from the 90s and 80s and 70s and be like, "Oh, that was bad."
Yeah,
so
for sure. Some of the depictions of, I think he was trying though in that coked out phase, and not to defend, but you know, he was trying and just it was a skill issue, right? He was like whatever, a middle school teacher.
Like for a coked out man, he was really doing his best.
He was really doing his best. The man wrote a lot of novels. The man wrote like 1,100 and he's still alive. So anyway,
still kicking.
In his own way to go. Another guy who writes a lot, who I think is similarly like top of the line mediocrity. Like I say that with all love, like, but just, you know, like not, like really good for like mainstream is Murakami Haruki, you know, and he said something I like, I think it was him. But you know, that basically if you're reading, so it made me think of another piece of advice. So I wonder how this applies to y'all, but you know, if you're reading the same things as everyone else, then you're having the same thoughts as everyone else. So sort of as a writer, his advice was like, just get into your own weird shit, whatever you like, and kind of double down on that. Again, I was just thinking, Rowan, as opposed to comparing yourself and am I up to date with the latest X, Y, and Z thing in my niche, my industry? Because I struggle. Like I don't listen to all of the AP. There's a lot of it. It turns out there's way too much now. And a lot of it is really good.
Much.
Y'all are good.
There's so much.
Turns out there's a lot. There's some other good ones too.
There's a lot of really good stuff out there. It's very hard to keep track of.
So much good stuff. Yeah. There's just a bunch of great shit.
And for RPGs, if we all are talking about Lord of the Rings and Stranger Things and Magic the Gathering, then every single plot is going to be this melange of those. You know, it's going to feel overly familiar. It's going to have the same problem as the Netflixization of cinema. Even if you take away AI or something. So I think there's something refreshing also about people telling stories that are just true to their lived experience, like we talked about, and just weird stuff. They get a bug up their ass or have an image beamed into their head by an alien of some specific thing, and they research it, write it, whatever. So those are the folks we're trying to bring on the show. I feel
I have to tell on Casey a little bit.
Do it.
I think I know what you're going to talk about too.
Yeah, of course you know what I'm going to talk about. So Casey really likes trains.
Hey, yo. Who doesn't love a good train?
Casey's a big train boy. And like the number of times that we've had encounters in the Badlands on, around, in, or above trains. Actually, we still need to do above. I hope that happens. Where there's like an encounter on a train, or there's like a big siege train coming into the city, and we'll ask, because we do like a post-show talkback thing for the Patreon, and we'll be like, Casey, what inspired this awesome train encounter? And his response invariably 100% of the time is, I just really like trains.
Yeah.
They're classic. They're a classic transportation form. Casey, tell us about trains.
It cannot be stressed how much trains changed everything into
true.
Like if you read, you know, history of technology studies and transportation in particular, like there's this phrase that was thrown around when trains were first introduced, which is the annihilation of space and time, because you could travel so fast. And it even is reflected in landscape paintings of the time. You see the focus shift from kind of like the foreground or the middle ground into the far distance, because people made themselves sick by riding on trains and looking directly down. They weren't used to the rapid speed, so it would make people barf.
That's crazy. Weren't women not allowed on trains for a little bit because people would thought that their shit would fall out?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'll look it up. We'll check for sure.
It was that was an early myth when trains were first coming around, was that women should not be allowed on board because everything would fall right out.
Just
like the momentum would pull everything out.
My God.
Which is nuts.
This is like the Gremlins, right? The return of the little people, the Slashid, who are always with us. They're always within the trees, and when the trees are felled and they move into the cottages, then the wood of the cottages contains them. You must knock upon the wood of the cottages, or else they might do something. So it's then they're in the trains. They're in the timber underneath Clackety Clacks. They're the little gremlins. They just have different names. They follow us.
Yeah.
And always behind us, always pushing us to story.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with misogynistic misuse of science. Medicine.
Oh no, it's definitely that. It's definitely that. I'm just saying it's articulated as like it's. I don't know. There's always some new reason. With every technology.
Oh, there's always a moral
Yeah.
panic. You see that
they shouldn't be on ships. They shouldn't be on trains.
Fucking bicycles in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Like there was
the bloomers,
man. The women are wearing pants.
It's almost as if people didn't want women to travel.
Yeah, it's almost as if they wanted them to be
by themselves,
restricted to one sphere.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Because they get the little devils in them, and the devils command them, and they're it's science, totally. Guys. It's science.
But Casey really likes trains,
There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, no. Oh, trains are rad, and I think that's also important is to just like don't be afraid of including something in your story just because you think it's cool. Like fuel your stories with what you think is rad. I say that after talking about classism fueling it, but I think the hatred of classism is what fuels me, but also trains. Like I have so far I've set 2 encounters on a train, and I like the idea of the motion of it. Like there's a very big risk of falling off and being just destroyed forever. Like it's a big scary battlefield in which there's like limited space, but if you do the wrong thing, you're gonzo.
Yeah.
And I also just love the idea of a big metal beast. Like I love giant machines. I love the big dumb objects like the space stations and like all throughout science fiction, spaceships and trains and even down to like zeppelins. I think they're just really neat. And
nuts.
And
idea.
There's this idea of this big metal machine that drives you around.
Yeah, it's
and
insane.
Being nice to that big metal machine. I think it's cool.
Well, there's something.
I love it.
And I'm not trying to predict the end of the Badlands here, even though I might be. But there's a kind of Chekhov's infrastructure quality to big metal things that move really fast, but have very narrow, tracks that could easily be disrupted by a well-placed charge of dynamite or, fire bolts from the hand of a sorcerer. So I feel like when you introduce big, cool infrastructure, you're also introducing the possibility that either the bad guys terroristically, like under siege style, or the PCs, because they're chaos gremlins, are going to use that as a weapon at some point, which is just, it's just epic. Yeah. It's just always there. What is a train if not just a giant bullet flying across the American? It's the most American thing, right? A giant bullet flying across states, murdering things in its way.
You say chaotic gremlins. I say insurgent freedom fighters.
Well, it really depends if they're Jamison Company or
the
anti-company, right? I mean, this is we'll find out as we listen.
Well, I was going to say, Casey, to the class tensions fueling it. What I do think is rad about that is an organized and militant working class, and if that's a possibility that can come out of the story, that's pretty sick.
Yeah,
that's definitely a possibility that can come out of the story.
Yeah, like
the working class is getting to be very militant and is working on being organized.
Hell yeah,
yeah,
hell yeah.
I think that's something I've wanted to encourage is like, in order to stop big companies from taking, like, the way companies take you over is they get you alone. They get you alone. And then they start selling things directly to you and whispering things in your ear about the guy next door. And the way you stop that is by coming together as a community. And I have wanted to create ways of having the community of the Badlands be open to the players, so that when the players come in and do something, the community sees that and goes, oh, maybe we can do that too. And sort of creating the Badlands to respond to the players, and for the players to want to invest in these communities and to want to make this their home. Man, it all comes back to home. Take a shot every time I say home.
There's, I think, like, one of the things too that I love about how you've approached that community building in the show is that it doesn't feel like one of those D&D campaigns where, you know, the three heroes go into a town and install new political leadership because it's some guy they know, and then leave and go somewhere else and do the same thing there. Like, I think you've given us a lot of really admirable and cool and powerful people to work with, as well as just the villains. So, like, I think I've never once during this campaign felt like I've been the most powerful ally we have. You know, like there's people in positions of power who know what they're doing and like who have genuine like plans and thoughts and feelings about things. So a lot of the time it feels like we're coming in and like joining a community effort and becoming part of that community and then collective like decision making, as opposed to us coming in and be like, well, okay, well, we'll kick ass for everybody and then install who the, you know, the person we want in a position of power. It's very egalitarian, I guess. And it's also like, I feel like I really admire our NPCs as much as, you know, they might admire us.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you would be the protagonist of the story, but not the heroes of the story necessarily. I really like that as a kind of a little twist.
I like to, I mean, this is just me, but I like to imagine a world where we are the protagonists of the story because this particular story is following us. But I think there is a world where, and I think maybe this is just because I'm a fan of Casey's NPC writing, I think there's a world where this story follows the track of any of the other people and is equally interesting.
Yeah.
That's why when they finally get to the final boss, they're going to show up and find out that it's already been defeated by a competing group of adventurers that have been building in the background of this campaign.
That's awesome. And now we don't have to die. So
it's going to be defeated by adventurers who are also all transformers who make a train.
It's a train. A train Listen, shoots the bad guy. Yeah,
it's been right in front of me the whole time.
By a transformer train, that's fine.
You know, I keep thinking too. You know, Casey, you may GM with a lot of flexibility and openness, but you are railroading your players quite a bit.
Well, that's been enough for us tonight, I think, folks. No, but I did want to say, Rowan, on the point you made, that's it's almost like social realism, you know, or it's like a Brechtian. It's like a different way of thinking about storytelling, which is in many times and places very normal. And in other times, places not as normal. And there's no reason that D&D needs to be in this sort of same godlike Star Wars, you know, Joseph Campbell sort of hero cycle register as, you know, Star Wars or Gilgamesh or whatever. It's like D&D used to be more like Conan the Barbarian, you know, murder hobo Peaker-esque, you know, so it's more like Tristram Shandy, and now it's more like Marvel. But you could also do it like you're describing, where it's actually this kind of, I don't know, almost like Brechtian, like we're all forming workers are going to revolt against the capitalists and figure out what that means to actually in terms of material reality, social reproduction, you know, here in the frontier. And I think that's a cool way to also think about, like you said, home as a theme, or Western as a genre, or having a reason to hang out with your buds and play games. Like, you know, you're giving yourselves multiple reasons. It's like overdetermined why you're doing the Badlands the way you are. And I'm curious to see how it all ends. We already know how it ends now. So everybody just hits with the train, which is sick.
Yeah. Everybody gets hit with the train.
With choo-choo sound effects. Yeah.
You can't very well, you know, do a whole satire of like American imperialist sort of individualism and capitalism and have your heroes be individualists, can you?
You could try.
You could certainly try.
But I'm glad you're not. So,
like, not the move.
In all seriousness, as we wrap up, are there things? So, Chris, do you have questions that we've not gotten to for Rowan?
The only question that I am left with is where can we find you all online? Do you have any pluggables, anything coming up that you want people to pay attention to? And how can we best support you?
Yes, indeed. You can find us at Mage Hand High Five, wherever you get your podcasts. Mage Hand High Five, The Badlands is the campaign that we're currently working on. You can find us at, I believe, Mage Hand High Five Podcast on Instagram, and like we're off Twitter now, but I think we're on Blue Sky and Discord. Find us on the link to our Discord is in all of our episode descriptions, and we have a really lovely Discord community and Patreon community. And coming up throughout April, or just behind us, depending on when this gets released, we have a couple of episodes of Badlands featuring our first in-campaign guest player, Jasmine Malave of 20-Sided Tavern here. We love Jasmine. And she came in to join us for actually a Seven Samurai-inspired mini arc.
That's great. I finally got to reference it directly.
That's perfect.
A lot of fun. It is
D6
literally
Samurai. D6 Samurai.
D6
plus one Samurai.
Mini arc.
Oh, that's so fun. I like that.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we designed it kind of as a potential entry point for people. So ideally, if you want to come in and listen on those on that guest arc featuring Jasmine, you'll be able to jump in as someone who hasn't listened to Badlands before and get still like a self-contained story that you haven't had to catch up for. So if you want to like give it a shot, check out this little mini arc that we're doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I can't wait. I'm going to be listening along. We know Jasmine, so that's fun. We've played actually a game with her.
That's so cool. She's
awesome.
Great. She's
her
so
character
cool.
her character's so badass. It's crazy.
I don't want to spoil it, but her like finisher on a person that was one of the villains in that arc was despicable. It was very good.
Looking forward
fully
to it.
Deserved, but still, it's awesome.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that for sure. Thank you so much, Rowan McStay, Casey Pappas, for joining us here on Why We Roll. You heard it here, folks. Go listen to Badlands. Go listen to Mage Hand High Five. These wonderful folks are putting out really cool content that you should definitely check out. Speaking of content, here's my segue. If you enjoyed this content, if you're enjoying Why We Roll, consider supporting us. You can head over to patreon.com/Stillfleet. And, for a couple bucks a month, you can support the production of Why We Roll, as well as the production of all of Stillfleet Studios' genre chainsawing games, such as Stillfleet and Blister Critters and Dance Macabre, and more to come. But anyway, that's it.
That's right. And if you're a certain novelist in Maine who writes about haunted places, you will open up a new tier for you if you want to donate. $1,000 a month. I mean, really, it's whatever you can spare.
And also, if Stephen King's listening, we'll open up a separate tier for you.
Yeah. We'll all. It'll be the Deadlights tier across the board.
Casey, Rowan, thanks so much for joining us. And also, open invitation, no pressure. But if you ever want to play some games, try out some of our games. We're around. You know where to find us.
Yes. Yes.
We're fans. So that's it. That's Why We Roll. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to Why We Roll. Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on all social media at Stillfleet. You can find out more about Dance Macabre, Stillfleet, and all of our games over at stillfleet.com.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here, and if you like today's show, why not have a listen to the All Things Nintendo podcast? Hosted by Brian Shea, former director at Game Informer and lifelong games journalist, the show explores the ins and outs of gaming's oldest company and one of its biggest, featuring interviews, featuring reviews, featuring everything you want to know about the world of Nintendo. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at podderation.com.